thought his time at Liverpool was over. They even pushed for him to leave. But Federico Chiesa stayed.
Doboslai. This is Mohamed Salah. What a ball, what a touch by the goalkeeper. Comes out, oh, Chiesa!
And now he's answering every doubt. In just 6 games this season, he's already produced 2 goals and 2 assists, most of them in limited minutes. And then came the twist. After Lino Giovanni's injury, Arne Slot turned to Chiesa and put his name on the Champions League list. Overnight, a player they almost discarded was thrust back onto Europe's biggest stage. A shot at redemption, a chance to write a new story. Every time he steps on the pitch, he's a spark, impact, goals, creativity. This isn't the Chiesa of last year. This is a player on a mission. Long before the headlines at Liverpool, Federico Chiesa was already living with football in his veins. Growing up in Settignano, just outside Florence, he was surrounded by the game. His father, Enrico, had been a striker in Italy, so the competitive fire was there from day one. Coaches at Fiorentina saw that spark early. They didn't just see a famous surname, they saw a fearless kid who trained like a professional and refused to play it safe. By February 2016, he'd earned his first senior contract, and within months, he was stepping onto the pitch for Fiorentina's first team. Even as a teenager, he didn't look like a passenger. In his debut season, he made over 30 appearances, scoring a handful of goals and, more importantly, running at defenders with the directness and aggression that became his trademark. Those seasons in purple turned him from a promising youngster into a genuine Serie A star, the kind of player Italian fans pinned their hopes on after Euro 2020. Fast forward to now, and Chiesa's story at Liverpool isn't about being a guaranteed starter, it's about reinvention. Arne Slot has handed him a very different role, the impact weapon off the bench. In just 137 minutes this season, he's already produced a goal and 2 assists, a ridiculous level of efficiency. Whenever Liverpool need a change of pace or a moment of quality, Slot turns to him. This isn't a simple comeback, it's the evolution of a player who once carried Italy's hopes and is now carving out a new chapter in England. Each cameo, each contribution feels like proof that the fire from Settignano still burns just as bright. By the time 2020 rolled around, it was obvious Federico Chiesa had gone beyond what Fiorentina could offer. Week after week, he was dragging the team forward, so a step up to a heavyweight club was only a matter of time. That opportunity came when Juventus moved in, structuring a clever 2-year loan with an obligation to buy, a package worth tens of millions and proof of how much faith they had in him. From his first appearances in the black and white shirt, he looked completely at home. Instead of feeling the weight of expectation at Italy's biggest club, he seemed energized by it. In his debut season, he produced 14 goals and 10 assists across all competitions, with many of those contributions arriving in decisive moments in Serie A, the Coppa Italia, and the Champions League. What changed at Juventus wasn't just his numbers, but his whole profile. The raw, unpredictable winger from Florence matured into a clinical attacker with sharper decision-making and a big-game mentality. His dribbles became more purposeful, his finishing more varied and composed. Curling efforts from distance, late runs into the box, left-foot strikes, all part of his arsenal. He also developed the other side of the game. No longer a luxury player waiting for the ball, Chiesa pressed, tracked back, and worked for the team. That blend of attacking unpredictability and relentless work rate turned him into exactly the kind of player coaches trust when the stakes are highest, and showed everyone that the hype around him had been justified. By the close of his first full season in Turin, Federico Chiesa was no longer simply a promising acquisition. He had transformed into one of the most feared wide men in Italian football, the kind of player who could turn a match with a single surge down the flank. His pace, directness, and newfound efficiency had Juventus fans believing they had secured the future of Italy's attack. That sense of momentum carried over into the international arena. Euro 2020 became the stage where the rest of the world finally caught up with what Serie A followers already knew. Early on, he impressed in flashes, but as the stakes rose, his influence grew. In the last 16 clash with Austria, with Italy looking tense and the scoreboard frozen at 0-0 in extra time, Chiesa produced the breakthrough. First touch, to control a looping ball in a crowded box, a feint onto his right foot, and then a ferocious shot into the roof of the net. It wasn't just a goal, it was a spark that reignited Italy's run. That ability to rise when it mattered most appeared again in the semi-final against Spain. Under the lights in a taut, tactical battle, he collected the ball on the edge of the box, shaped his body, and curled a finish beyond the keeper to break the deadlock. It was pure quality, the kind of moment that shifts the entire narrative of a tournament. Italy would eventually progress on penalties, but without Chiesa's strike, they might not even have reached Wembley. In the final against England, he didn't score, but his impact was constant. He drove at defenders, dragged fouls out of them, linked play, and carried the ball out of pressure when Italy were under siege. It was the performance of a leader in everything but age, and it earned him a spot in the official team of the tournament. At just 23 years old, he had become the face of a fearless new Italy. Yet, as often happens in football, the highest peaks were followed by the steepest climb. The question stopped being about talent and started being about availability. Injuries began to arrive at the worst possible times. In January 2022 came the devastating ACL tear, the sort of injury that can alter a career path entirely, keeping him off the pitch for nearly a year. Even after returning, he was fighting rhythm as much as opponents. 1 week sharp and explosive, the next sidelined again with another setback. For a club like Juventus, built on relentless consistency, this instability was costly. Gradually, the aura of invincibility faded, replaced by whispers about fragility. Supporters and pundits alike began to wonder if the player who had been Italy's hero was now too unreliable to anchor Juve's plans. It's the brutal side of elite football. People stop celebrating your highlights and start measuring your absences. In the end, the club made its decision, choosing to cash in rather than build around him, a harsh ending to what had once looked like a defining chapter. And then came the twist no one in football expected. After years of being talked about as the jewel of Italian football, after dazzling at Euro 2020 and terrifying defences in Turin, Federico Chiesa was supposed to be untouchable. Even when injuries struck, most people assumed Juventus would hold on, rebuild him, and wait. Instead, they let him go. And not to a mid-table project or a romantic return home, but to Liverpool. And not for a blockbuster fee either, for just 12 million euros. When the deal broke, it didn't feel real. News feeds lit up with the headline, and people genuinely thought it was a typo. This was the same player who had been valued at close to 100 million euros only a couple of seasons earlier. This was Italy's Euro hero, the winger who had carved open Austria in extra time, bent one past Spain in a semi-final, and run England ragged at Wembley. Now, moving for what looked like a loan fee in today's market. It felt surreal, a shockwave through Europe's transfer scene. But the price tag told its own story. Juventus had grown tired of waiting. They wanted guaranteed availability. They needed players who could be trusted week in, week out. Chiesa, for all his brilliance, had become a gamble they weren't willing to take. Liverpool and Arne Slot saw it differently. They didn't just see the injury record, they saw the player hiding inside the frustration, the winger who could still tilt a match with one run, one shot, one moment of courage. For Slot, it was a tactical weapon. He wasn't buying a 90-minute workhorse or a brand name to plaster on posters. He was bringing in a dagger to keep hidden until the right moment. Someone who could step off the bench when the game was locked, drag defenders out of shape, and change the momentum in a heartbeat. For 12 million euros, it was a calculated risk with massive upside. Exactly the kind of deal that can define an era. Reality, though, was brutal. Chiesa's first season in England didn't match the fairy tale some had imagined. It wasn't a disaster, but it was far from the explosive renaissance fans were dreaming of. 14 appearances across all competitions, 2 goals, 2 assists. Numbers that, on paper, looked respectable until you realized he had only been on the pitch for 466 minutes. Most of them cameos, thrown into games late when the outcome was already sliding away. For a man once regarded as one of Europe's most dangerous wide forwards, it was a humbling, frustrating year. But here's what separated Chiesa from so many players whose careers stall. His mentality never cracked. He didn't sulk. He didn't throw his arms up or leak stories to the press. He kept his head down and worked. He kept training, kept believing, kept sharpening the edges of his game for the day he would be trusted again. That attitude meant that when Arne Slot truly took control at Liverpool, he didn't inherit a broken winger. He inherited a competitor. A player who had spent a year swallowing his pride and building himself back up. And now, at the start of this season, all that patience and work are erupting. In just 5 games, Chiesa has already produced 1 goal and 2 assists, almost matching last season's totals, and he's done it in only 137 minutes of football. That isn't just an improvement, it's ruthless efficiency. Every time Slot calls his name, Chiesa brings impact. Every cameo feels like a spark. He's beginning to look again like the player who once lit up Europe. The story isn't finished. But right now, Federico Chiesa is writing a different kind of comeback. The quiet kind, built on grit, not hype. The kind of comeback that makes a 12 million euro fee look like the heist of the decade. Arne Slot has completely redefined Federico Chiesa's role at Liverpool. Rather than throwing him straight into the starting 11 every week, Slot has turned him into a secret weapon, a game changer waiting on the bench. The moment he steps onto the pitch, the rhythm of the match shifts. Tired defenders suddenly have to deal with explosive runs, relentless pressing, and a winger who can conjure something from nothing in seconds. For opponents, it's a nightmare. For Liverpool, it's a dream scenario. What makes this even more striking is how confident and liberated Chiesa looks now. His touches are sharper, his decision-making clearer, and he's once again willing to take on defenders with that fearless drive that first made him a star. The burden of being the guy is gone. In its place is a player who understands his role and is thriving because of it. He's free, he's dangerous, and he's enjoying his football again. Liverpool's faith in him is obvious. Slot didn't just hand him minutes. He rewarded that resurgence by adding Chiesa to the Champions League squad. It's a huge show of trust and a sign that the club believes he can deliver on Europe's biggest stage again. For a player who once looked lost in a cycle of injuries and doubts, that's a powerful statement. And this is where the narrative flips. From being a 100 million euro prodigy at Fiorentina and Juventus, to having his career nearly derailed by injuries, to now emerging as one of Liverpool's most decisive weapons, Chiesa is writing one of football's great modern comeback stories. The question is no longer, can he do it? But how far can this resurgence go? Do you believe this is the start of something special? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more deep dives, and check out our last video. This story isn't finished yet, it's just getting started.